Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode here at the Damage Report. Today is going to be a big news Wednesday, but it's not a big news Wednesday just yet because we're experiencing some tech problems. Jayar Jackson will be joining us. We'll have him. Don't worry about that. And we will have 90 minutes of awesome news. Awesome in that it will be fun to discuss and think about. Not awesome in that it's good news because I'm scanning over the rundown and it largely isn't. Although, honestly, we have one block that I think is going to be nothing but good fun. Good vibes with a bud of ours who's doing great thing. So that is coming up very soon. But what's gonna happen in a minute is we're gonna launch into our first block. Jayar will be joining us at some point, hopefully. And so in advance of that, if you have anything to say about the show, the topics we're talking about, or your hype for the watch list, which is coming next Monday, feel free to send us comments, tweets, super chats, all that, and we will respond as we go. And with that said, why don't we launch into this thing?
The only thing I've been very clear about that, I just don't know how you break a rule to make a rule and thinking you're doing something that's going to, we've never done this.
Okay, so that is Joe Manchin, so already, but and the topic, by the way, is the filibuster and possible reform of it. So when you combine those two things, it is like chocolate and peanut butter and relish. Don't like it, I just don't like it anymore. I like the possibilities, don't like what's coming of it. Because over the last 48 hours or so, there's been a lot of conversation about yet another attempt to reform or revise or differently codify the filibuster so that literally anything can get done in what remains of Joe Biden's first term. We've already been through multiple iterations of this. An overall change to how many votes are required to end debate and allow a vote. They're not gonna do that, they're not interested. Allowing carve outs for individual things. Sinema and Manchin and probably others, although they're not being honest about it, aren't for that. Except, by the way, they totally are because they literally just did it a couple weeks ago for the debt ceiling to be raised. That's something that we will return to. Now, we have among the, I feel weird. I feel like I am playing into mainstream media spin in calling this a reform at all. They just want people to have to actually filibuster when they filibuster. And guess what? He's not even gonna allow that. And as he's not even allowing that, he's not even going to be minimally honest with you about what it is because he's gonna stop it from happening while saying, oh no, I'm totally for it. I have no problem with that. That's not the problem. It's the thing he was alluding to in the cold open. It's you can't break a rule to make a rule. So what the hell is that cutesy thing supposed to mean? It means we cannot change any of the rules unless we get a 60 vote threshold for the rules change, which is not required, has not been required, was not required just a couple of weeks ago when again, they allowed a carve out on the filibuster rules for a raise to the debt ceiling. But now he's saying you cannot make any change to anything having to do with the filibuster unless you get 10 Republicans to sign on. And that is gonna be difficult. That's the whole reason we're having this conversation. They won't allow anything with the filibuster because they have the filibuster. And you think they're going to allow you to change the filibuster? You have to get their consent to allow a change to the rules that will allow literally anything about our Senate to actually function, thereby allowing literally anything about our entire government to function. It's not going to happen. And so he says, no talking filibuster. It is going to be a 60 vote threshold and you do not have to actually filibuster. You do not have to be there. You don't have to hold the attention of the Senate, hold the attention of the nation. You don't have to have a minimum quorum, a minimum requirement that Republicans actually are there for this. No, it's just everything is automatically a 60 vote requirement for literally everything, and there have been a lot of ways in which their supposed devotion to the tradition of the filibuster has been absolute horse stuff. This is the most insane. Because at least in the past, you had to filibuster at one point. The silent thing is like barely older than most of the people watching this show. And this is not about a filibuster. This is not about debate. This is not about like taking a stand when it's most important. This is just requiring that we accept minority rule from now on. That is all that this is. This is not about special cases. of making sure that there's a check and a balance on the most extreme legislation or anything like that. It is, as long as you can maintain 40 senators, you decide if anything happens. And we already know that you don't want anything to happen. So guess what? Nothing's ever gonna happen, because already the Senate is already disproportionate in that Republicans don't have to even have 40% of the American public on their side to have 40% of the Senate. And yet that will be enough to effectively rule all. And you might think, well, okay, sure, John, that allows them to filibuster, that allows them to stop progress, which is already unacceptable and devastating. But then what about their priorities? Their priorities don't have anything to do with this. They can already do tax cuts. They've done it every time they've had a Republican president, as long as you've been alive, and they will continue to do it as long as you are alive. They will get in, they will pass literally trillions of dollars in tax cuts. The Democrats, who supposedly have staked everything on, well, what if we need the filibuster? Won't be able to stop it. Trillions of dollars will fly out the door and into the pockets of the wealthiest people that our world has ever known. Filibuster's got nothing to do with it. And literally everything else that they might want will come via the Supreme Court. And they can put just random hosts from the Daily Wire on the Supreme Court if they want. Filibuster can't stop it. Filibuster's got nothing to do with it. That is all that they want. There's some other stuff that they'll talk about, sure, that'll fill the airwaves, fill the day on Fox News, and lots of right-wing blog posts will be written about it. There'll be conspiracy theories about it. It doesn't have anything to do with legislation, because their priorities have nothing to do with legislation. They've got the judges, they've got the tax cuts, they've got everything that they want. And Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema know that. They agree with them. They want those same things. They want a shield against legislation ever benefiting you, ever benefiting the working class, and way beyond the working class, benefiting anyone who isn't uber wealthy. That has now been cut off. And until we replace literally every single Democrat in the Senate and make sure that all of them are as good as they need to be on this topic, then it is not going to change. And that is an incredibly difficult task, a time-consuming task, because they have found loopholes in the system. Sinema and Manchin know that they don't have to do anything. And I'm trying very hard right now to swear, and it is difficult. I hope you appreciate the effort. They can just sit there and take up space. And it will be literally years until any challenge can be waged against them. Specifically with Manchin, with how messed up our political media is and the campaign finance system in this country, no matter how unpopular he either should be or might in fact be, it'll be damn near impossible to get him out. And he doesn't even really care about it. He'd just become governor the next cycle. It is incredibly frustrating. And so that's where we're at. Even the most minimal non-reform reform isn't gonna happen. There's a little bit more. I'm gonna run through some graphics of how like purposefully I think insulting this is. Let's jump into it. So he's supposedly been amenable to revising the filibuster, but not outright abolishing it. But he rejected the Democrats' idea of using a simple majority vote to do so, otherwise known as the nuclear option, which is again, like at one point, using the term nuclear option actually meant something. It was supposed to represent a really big change to something. No, now it's literally anything that has a chance of allowing the government to function. That's the nuclear option. It's post-apocalyptic. The idea that the Senate would be able to pass something. He says, in relation to this, the majority of my colleagues in the Democratic caucus have changed their minds. I respect that. They have a right to change their minds. I haven't. I hope they respect that too. I've never changed my mind on the filibuster. And you know what? I believe him. And not in that he hasn't changed what he has said about the filibuster. He has 100% changed what he said about the filibuster. Everyone was spreading this yesterday. Bold progressives, great quotes. He co-sponsored and voted in favor of Senate Resolution 21. This is back in 10 years ago, which required that senators who wish to filibuster a bill must actually take the floor and make remarks, or what I call filibustering. He was totally in favor of that. In fact, yesterday, we're not gonna play any more of his dumb face making stupid noises, but yesterday, he said he was in favor of the talking filibuster. Last year, he said he was in favor of the talking filibuster, but not like changing it via just a majority vote. That's what it is. And honestly, all of this is totally to the side of what he said about never changing his mind on the filibuster, because I think fundamentally what is on his mind about the filibuster is this is a shield against you damn peasants ever being able to exercise any power over government, no matter how much you do, no matter how much you work over years, over decades to change people's minds about particular issues, to get them to think differently about particular values, to believe that some things could actually change, that the US could catch up with any number of other advanced democracies in various areas of public policy, no matter how much you do that, no matter how much you organize, no matter how much you register people to vote, no matter how much you overcome centuries of baked in voter suppression and structural inequity that maintains minority rule in this country, no matter how much you do of all of that, we have this one extra thing that will make it functionally impossible for you to ever exercise any power. And I love it, and I will maintain it. And I will say whatever BS I have to about the talking filibuster, about thresholds or whatever, it doesn't matter. I want that defense. And so, if there's a critical mass of people who won't even consider reforming the filibuster, then that is the battleground that I will fight on. And Joe Manchin did for years. Now, like, he has to retreat to, okay, I will grant you the talking filibuster, but it's all about the process of getting it. And we really need Republicans on our side to do that. And maybe I'll spend the next 3 months talking to them to try to get them to cross over. And we know exactly how that will end. With Joe Manchin, with Joe Biden in terms of legislation, he ran and got a lot of positive press from mainstream media for being the guy who was going to be able to work with Republicans and get them to cross over. Like Obama before him, actually. And in neither case did it work. In this case, it was even more of a debacle than when Obama tried, wasting so much time and political capital. And nothing will come of that, because in 2024, when, I don't know, like Pete Buttigieg runs and he's going up against Nina Turner or AOC or God, I don't know. The mainstream media will once again say, well, Buttigieg is the one who can unite us. He's the one who will extend a hand to the Republicans, and we will potentially waste more time. We won't have to in practice because he won't win, but that is what we're looking at. And along the way, we'll have to hear quotes like this from Joe Manchin, who says, there's no checks and balances in this process. The only thing we have is the filibuster. And if you have a situation we have right now where you have the executive branch of government and you have Congress, the House and the Senate, and they're all the same, and there's no check and balance because basically things just sweep right through, and the same thing could happen if Republicans had everything. You have the Congress, the House, and the Senate because the people for literally years over multiple elections have told you we don't like what they're doing and we want a change. What more must they do? And he doesn't care about that. He understands that. He doesn't want them to win. He doesn't care what they think. He doesn't care what they want. There's no check and balance for the elites to stop any change from happening, any threat to their economic position, the dominance that they have over our government and over our country. That is what he wants. And again, the reason I read the last part of that quote, the things just sweep right through. Yes, that is definitely what I would characterize the US Senate as being, is too much is done too quickly. He says, and the same thing could happen if Republicans had everything. I want you to be ready to respond to that, not just from total liars like Joe Manchin or massive liars on the right, but some people who you might agree with on some things politically, like so-called Democratic moderates or centrists, or even some liberals. They will be won over by that argument, the idea that things could swing back. There are a lot of great responses to that. We don't have time to go back over all of them. I will say one thing is, if you're worried about things swinging back, you are guaranteeing that they will, because nothing is being done. It is clear what the American people think about that when you look at the polls. The second is what I talked about earlier, in that they already have carve-outs for literally everything that they want to do. And all the other like social stuff, which I think rightfully a lot of people are worried about. Whether it's race-based voter suppression, stripping away of reproductive rights. Again, they don't care about the filibuster for that. They don't need to make these things federal law. They've got the Supreme Court in position to either legislate from the bench, which they've said that they're always against, or at least as a defense that allows state legislators and state Supreme Courts to enforce all of that social stuff themselves. And you can challenge it if you want. You can go through courts of appeals and everything. It will get to the Supreme Court where they have a conservative supermajority and they will be allowed to do whatever they want. They have the tax cuts, they have the judges, and they have the ability at the state level to make the country into the Handmaid's Tale or Children of Men or whatever the hell they want. They can do it all. So that point from Manchin is a lie and stupid. It's both of those things, and you're gonna hear it a lot, so you better be ready. Now let's go briefly to one other point. while Manchin is receiving a lot of the focus on this latest iteration of the conversation about reforming the filibuster or even requiring the filibuster, remember that Sinema's right there with him. She's not going to allow any changes to the rules either. And while Manchin is looking like he's going to be primary, that's one of the threats that's going around. And he says, I've been primaried my entire life. That would be nothing new for me, which is true. He does get primaried and he has very little reason to worry about it because our system is, again, effed up in a million different ways. There's a little bit more new pressure coming at Kyrsten Sinema. Emily's List, which is an important group working in Democratic politics, says Emily's List is laser focused on the 2022 elections, holding the House and Senate, electing governors and state legislators, understanding that access to the ballot box and confidence in election results are critical to our work in our country. We have joined with many others to impress upon Senator Sinema the importance of the pending voting rights legislation in the Senate. So far, those concerns have not been addressed. We have not endorsed or contributed to Senator Sinema since her election in 2018. Right now, her decision to reject the voices of allies, partners, and constituents who believe the importance of voting rights outweighs that of an arcane process means she will find herself standing alone in the next election. Electing Democratic pro-choice women is not possible without free and fair elections. Protecting the right to choose is not possible without access to the ballot box. So we want to make it clear, if Senator Sinema cannot support a path forward for the passage of this legislation, the voting rights legislation they're referring to there, we believe she undermines the foundations of our democracy, her own path to victory, and also the mission of Emily's List, and we will be unable to endorse her moving forward. That is perfectly reasonable. You go back historically, I haven't necessarily agreed with all of Emily's List endorsements. They will very often say that the most important thing to them is protecting women's right to choose, but often in practice, the most important thing to them is boxing out progressive women and replacing them with Democratic centrists, whether they're women or not. Generally women, but not always. They'd prefer a guy who might be wishy-washy on the topic of reproductive rights over a progressive woman who's very clear on it. That said, agree with quite a few of their endorsements, and this is definitely right. The issue with what they're saying there is, again, they already have the loophole. Kyrsten Sinema is in there for years from now, no matter what we say or do. And maybe she would be primaried, and maybe she would even lose, and maybe she doesn't give a damn about that for a number of different reasons. What she is doing right now is protecting the rich, and the rich will pay her back if the impossible happens and she actually loses a primary. She'll be given a position on a board or a lobbying job or whatever. And honestly, that's like the backup to the backup, because as we were talking about just a week ago, she doesn't even seem that interested in it. She thinks she's running for president. Now that is a fool's dream. She would never get elected, but what she could get while running is tons of money thrown to her and PACs that would be supporting her, and it could set up even more opportunities for her later on. Her future is guaranteed, even if every single one of her constituents spends literally years hating her guts. Great democracy that we've got here. So they're doing what they can. Emily's List can't unilaterally remove her from office or anything like that. That's sort of the issue, that there's no recourse for her constituents. They are at least important in terms of donations. You can see here, they've donated over $400,000. I believe that's in the last cycle, correct? Not 100%. Anyway, they do donate a lot of money. The issue is, well, obviously these supposed moderates, supposed centrists, they're just corporatists on both sides. They care about the campaign finance and they're there to protect their donors. At the end of the day, that is sort of a proxy for defending their interests, whether it manifests directly in terms of donations or not. That is why, like, the common refrain that, well, why don't we just pay them more, never actually works. Yes, they want that campaign finance, and yes, they want to be personally paid, but they are part of that group and they will defend its interests. This is, after all, a class war. It's not really about democracy and elections. It's fundamentally about a class war and the use of power, and they have figured out ways to evade any accountability whatsoever and any reform whatsoever. Okay. With that, that is, I think, enough updates on the filibuster. We've got a lot more to talk about. We're gonna take a short break, and I believe we're gonna take a real break so that we can figure out our situation. No? Do we have any update on our situation? Okay, we're gonna go into a social break and try to figure it out after this. But anyway, let's talk about some more news. New York's AG is closing in on Donald Trump. That is literally true, but before I give you the details in this story, I really want to just give you the heads up, as I have many times before. Please do not invest too much of your spirit into the idea that there will ever be legal or financial consequences for Donald Trump and his family for any of the many obvious, blatant crimes that they have committed. That is not the way that America is set up. It's not impossible, and I'm glad that people are doing the work they're supposed to be doing. The AG here is doing serious work, but this is America. He's wealthy and politically connected. That's a pretty good shield against consequences. In any event, let's go to the updates. The New York Attorney General's office said last night that told a court that its investigators have uncovered evidence that former President Donald Trump's company used, quote, fraudulent or misleading asset valuations to get loans and tax benefits. Bear in mind, this is terminology that regular people don't often have to use, and trying to figure out exactly what it means isn't necessarily easy for people with relatively simplistic investments and all that. But this is effectively the same genre of criminality that we've had many reasons to believe for a very long time is true. I mean, this is what Cohen was talking about in his testimony like 3 years ago. AOC had some great questioning exactly in this area, which is gaming the system by, on the one hand, overestimating how much things are worth, generally to secure loans, and then on the other hand, underestimating for tax purposes and all sorts of things like that. It's a fun game that they play. Okay, so this is sort of the basic idea of crime that we've had a lot of reason to believe that the Trump organization has historically engaged in. Now, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in terms of next steps for this. But we do want to give you more details about what it is that led the AG to believe that this sort of criminal behavior had been going on. So apparently they used personal financial statements ranging from all the way back to 2004 to 2020 that had been filed by Trump's accounting firm Mazars. The Attorney General's office said the Trump organization overstated the value of land donations made in New York and California on paperwork submitted to the IRS to justify several $1 million in tax deductions. Okay, so there's a lot of examples of this. They're interesting. Let's jump into it. They list his Seven Springs estate north of New York City as being worth $291 million. That's according to the company, based on the dubious assumption that it could reap $161 million from building 9 luxury homes. That certainly seems optimistic. They added a brand premium of 15% to 30% to the value of some properties because they carried the Trump name, despite financial statements explicitly stating they didn't incorporate brand value. So best case scenario, they're just horrible at doing this sort of thing. Worst case scenario for them legally is that they lied, and they lied to the tune of 15 to 30% to reap benefits from it. They inflated the value of a suburban New York golf club by millions of dollars by counting fees for memberships that weren't sold or were never paid. It's just millions of dollars. They valued a Park Avenue condominium tower at $350 million based on proceeds it could reap from unsold units, even though many of those apartments were likely to sell for less because they were covered by rent stabilization laws. And these are like it's the intersection of these sorts of regulations that allow them to try to game the system. Not because it means that what they're doing is justified in terms of accounting or legally, but it provides difficulty. Now you have to adjudicate this, and they can drag out that process legally for potentially years. We're sort of in the middle of that. We might be looking forward to years of that going off into the future. Really fast, a few more examples. They valued an apartment being rented to Ivanka Trump as high as $25 million, even though she had an option to buy it for $8.5 million. Hey, maybe she would just pay the $25 million to be a good sport. I don't know. And they said in documents that its stake in an office building, 40 Wall Street, was worth $525 million to $602 million, between 2 to 3 times the estimate reached by appraisers working for the lender Capital One. So many examples of this, and I'm sure much more where that came from. I believe joining us now to discuss the one, the only, Jayar Jackson. Jayar, how's it going?
There I am.
There you are, Jayar. How's it going?
It's not going well.
Sorry, we can't bring on Jayar without the Big News Wednesday. It is now officially a Big News Wednesday. Jayar, how's it going?
Big news on this Wednesday. Everything sucks.
Wait, are you implying that during the pandemic, the ability to connect to video chat stuff is difficult and sometimes frustrating?
sometimes impossible, actually. This is really weird how it works, and considering someone could have taken advantage of the fact that we've been in this pandemic for a couple of years now and come up with some way that people can communicate. It's really weird.
Yeah. No, the cool thing about Skype in particular, which we use, is that it has not gotten better during the pandemic or in the 15 to 20 years preceding it. It's exactly the same and just as bad. Anyway, Jayar, I don't know how much you heard of that block, but the New York Attorney General's office is saying that they've sometimes inflated, sometimes undervalued the property of their real estate to benefit financially, and that sort of fraud is now going to be a focus of their investigation. What do you think?
Well,
what are your expectations or hopes?
Yeah, this is where, my expectations are going to remain the same. But we'll see. Like, I still have hope. The hope is still there because at least they're continuing to pursue this. It's one of those things where now it's been this long. Trump's been out of office for this year now. And you would think maybe some of these would fizzle out. Maybe they'd have been pushed off by someone else. All these things could have happened, but they're still on it. In fact, progressing. We're finding out where they're narrowing the investigation down to. We see the specific things that they're looking at. This is great, right? But there's always something still left down the process at some point where maybe Monkey Rich gets thrown in. Maybe he's got some kind of turns that will pull some kind of trick, or maybe they're going to try and run out the clock with delays. We know the process. We'll just see.
Yeah. Well, we know, how they try to upset this stuff. I mean, he sued the AG last month. So again, they make it personal against the person. There's the media war against them. He's going to have the entire right-wing media infrastructure discrediting these investigations. I mean, like these specific claims. Look, I suppose the AG could literally just be making them up, but it seems difficult to imagine that. Despite that, yesterday, James's office said it had not decided whether the evidence outlined in the court papers merited legal action. Well, if you steal cigarillos, there merits legal action.
Exactly.
They're overinflating their estimates by hundreds of millions of dollars. Do I get to do that?
Nope.
My house seems humble when you drive by it on the street. Did you know it's worth $30 billion? Apparently no, because I'm a plebe, I don't get to do that. But if you're rich and powerful, you get to do that.
100%, bro. Yeah, it's okay. So again, like you mentioned, you can't leave a convenience store and walk out with a Snickers without them saying, "Oh my God, you're breaking law. We need to have crime deterrent. Make sure people don't do this ever again." What's the crime deterrent here? Whether or not we're going to let people continue to do this?
Exactly. Yeah. Because again, the people who are investigating them, the ones who back them, the public in charge, like they may disagree over abortion or whatever, but they're the same group at the end of the day. We're gonna move on to something more positive, get some good vibes going. I just wanna read one comment because I saw it pop up, and this is, after all, for the short term, the last Big News Wednesday with Jayar Jackson. So it would not be a Big News Wednesday without Jayar Jackson if we did not read a super chat from Lena Peak. So Lena says, "I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for today to be the last Big News Wednesday for the foreseeable future. Excited for the watch list though." And there's a few candy emojis. Yes, look, I'm sad about that too. I don't think it has to be the case. I think Jayar Jackson is a dynamo. I think he can end the watch list, run upstairs and do this show. And I think we should all put an incredible amount of pressure on him to do so.
Now, John, we all had faith that I could do that. And I've tried that today with 15 minutes difference.
That's
and
true.
Look at when I jump in.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a permanent workstation set up, ready to go. That's what we're gonna do. Anyway, with that, you ready to have some fun, Jayar?
Yeah, I need something, man, because I'm about to break some things.
Okay, this is gonna be fun. Let's jump into it.
Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the US Senate, and I approve this message.
So that is Gary Chambers, friend of the show, co-hosted a number of times. And Jayar, I understand that I am just a human. I am fallible, clearly, and I can be consumed by hope. But is that not one of the best political ads you've ever seen in your entire goddamn life?
This is what I'm talking about. Okay, we talk transformative figures. We talk about people who've changed the game and come in as an outsider and done the right thing. This is the epitome of that. This is what we're supposed to be looking for when you look for candidates that are looking to represent the people. So it's we see these ads all the time with machine guns, flamethrowers, bombs, blowing up Priuses, shooting up the bill. I'm gonna shoot this bill because I'm a smart guy. No, but we don't sit back. Yeah, we don't get startled and go, he's holding an AK-47. Oh my gosh, she just shot a rocket launcher at that car. This is outrageous and violent. That's normal because it's been normalized since the beginning. We haven't, what we've normalized with things like smoking weed, in this particular case, a fat blunt on an ad, is that scary. Oh my God, and a black guy doing it too. This is even scarier because when my 16-year-old white kid does it, that's wonderful. He's just relaxing because he's had a tough day of lacrosse. So in this case, if you see the connection, he knows what the stereotype look is that people are afraid of. A black guy smoking some weed, and what's he gonna do next? He's gonna run for Congress. He's gonna say something that you don't know and give you some details and background about what you don't know, as he did before. This is what he does. He gets your attention and he educates you.
Yep, it is very scary. I noticed he's black, and that scares me deeply. And then I saw that he was doing drugs, and that scares me more than if he were literally firing a rocket launcher at my house. And then on top of that, he was saying facts that are true and that reveal how messed up and inequitable our system is. And he's describing actual structural racism.
Crazy.
That's not just historic, but is still true. And so I am terrified of this right now. Now, I wanna give you a little bit of information. It's called 37 Seconds. He tweeted about it. He says, I hope this ad works to not only destigmatize the use of marijuana, but also forces a new conversation that creates the pathway to legalize this beneficial drug and forgive those who are arrested due to outdated ideology. This is one of my favorite graphics ever. I'm gonna read this. This is a quote from Rolling Stone. Chambers' spokesperson, Randy Jones, confirmed the blunt in the video was, in fact, real. And that's Chambers doing his own stunts. There's no stuntmen, there's no CGI. It was real, and he smoked. He did inhale. Anyway,
there was Think about how far we've come. Look, we've seen all these other politicians that admitted way later, oh yeah, a joint touched my lips when I was 21, but I was in college and I was being smart. I was still pursuing my presidential aspirations when I was 18 years old. Sure. But I was just smoking with some friends and it just touched. Now this is for real. This is real life. This is people who've actually done this before, which is tons of people. So this is relatable as much as they don't want to point it out. This is relatable. And the facts behind this relatable scene you're seeing here, that's the startling part. That's what we should be paying attention to and say, wow, really? We need to do something about this.
Exactly. So let me give you the information about what's actually going on in Louisiana, where he's running for Senate. On January 1st, smokable medical marijuana became legal in Louisiana under certain conditions. Last year, a Louisiana law decriminalized the possession of up to 14 grams of marijuana. The fine is now $100 or less and no jail time. Also last year, the New Orleans City Council pardoned 10,000 cases of marijuana possession for anyone convicted after 2010. So Louisiana, like a lot of states in this country, seems to be moving the right direction on this. By the way, like that video is everywhere, all over Reddit, because the image, he's smoking. It's controversial, except it's not, in the media. It's not controversial, except that it is in a very weird way. It was on, people are saying it was on Colbert last night. I'm gonna have to see that. I love the idea of like a friend of the show being talked about on Colbert. A Pew Research Center survey in April found 91% of Americans believe marijuana should be legalized. 60% said for both recreational and medicinal usage. And I'm just gonna say this, and maybe this is my attempt to push the over window on this like 2 more inches. In the past, we've made these big distinctions between recreational and medicinal use. I'm gonna say, let's get rid of that. If you think it can be used medicinally, then just let people use it. Imagine making beer only available for medicinal use. What kind of actual logical argument is there for that anymore? All it was ever for, let's be real, was to just get people to be acceptable with it. And I get that strategically. Let's dispense with that. It is no more dangerous, and I would say far less debilitative, like it'll knock you out less than alcohol. That is indisputable, and almost nobody in America disputes it anymore. So can we stop pretending that this is so controversial?
You know what we see? You know what we've glorified? We've glorified tailgating. We've glorified people going to college and pro football games and any kind of sport and sitting out in the parking lot and drinking until they can't stand up anymore. Bill's Mafia, they have fun diving off the top of cars through WWE style tables and hurting themselves, throwing each other on the ground. And you know what they're doing that whole time? They're drinking and probably smoking too, but they're definitely drinking. Is that scary? Someone could get hurt. What if a member of the Dolphins fan base walks by when they're playing a game? They might get mad because they're drunk. You know, when people are drunk, they get angry. When they get angry, they start fights. We see it at every sporting event. But you know what you can buy at every sporting event? An $18 beer.
And so, by the way, I'm not under any illusions. A blunt is going to cost $50 at a stadium, but let's do it. Come on. Anyway, great ad by Gary there. Hope to talk to him about it in the near future. But many of you in the audience have already seen that ad. You crave something new, and we've got something new for you. Let's jump into this video.
Let's talk about John Kennedy for a second, a senator who also has garnered national attention with his various quips, one-liners, other things he tends to tell reporters in the hallways here in the US Senate. He, of course, was once a Democrat. What do you think is your number one reason for believing that he shouldn't be there anymore?
I think you look at the condition of our state and where our country is. Louisiana ranks 50 in the nation in crime. We rank 49 in opportunity. We rank 47 in healthcare, 46 in education, you name it. And Kennedy's been elected almost as long as I've been alive. And you can't take responsibility for our good culture and gumbo and all of the flavor we have, but not responsibility for where we are as a state in comparison to our neighbors. And so, my generation and others are looking at the leadership, and we don't want Senator Froghorn Leghorn. We want somebody who's going to go to DC and represent the people.
Just give him the seat, man. Kennedy, just get out of there. Give him the seat. I know it's Louisiana. It's going to be incredibly difficult, but he's just he did not come to play. He came conquer. It was great right there.
Ready to represent the people. This is representation of the people that are there. This is the reason why you get someone from the community to run. It's why they make sure that your residence is in the state that you're saying you're gonna go represent, so you can know and represent the people there. We've gotten so far from that we don't realize the people that are in office, majority of the people in office, don't represent the folks who are actually living there on the ground. That's why when they go on these news report programs and they say, the people of Louisiana want this, ain't spoken to one person in Louisiana. You spoke to the donors of Louisiana. I'm sorry. The rich donors of Louisiana want this. This is what our politicians push for, and we need this change.
100%. We got a little bit more I want you to show. He, just like in that ad, he comes equipped with the facts. Let's go to a little bit more of that video.
Got a senator who voted against the infrastructure bill, right? We have a D or an F grade in infrastructure, and we rank 47 in the country in infrastructure. And those billions of dollars are going to help Louisiana put people back to work, fix our crumbling roads and bridges. You go to New Orleans, you go to small towns around this state, they're potholes that you can step into and be knee deep to waist deep, right? And so having a US senator who doesn't prioritize the people of Louisiana, doesn't prioritize working people, would rather spend his time on Fox News making quips about whether or not we taste like a chicken to a bear. Those are not things that value or bring value to the voters of Louisiana or to this country. And we need leaderships that's going to talk about healthcare, that's going to talk about education and the child tax credit, and how do we advance this democracy? How do we protect the right to vote, right, for every American citizen in this country, instead of being an obstructionist to the process of democracy? And that.
Just great information. People in the chat are talking about how bad the roads are there. Yeah,
it's
and
unreal.
Their senator tried to block them from getting that money.
Unreal. So this is him talking about what's wrong. How much do the other guys talk about what's wrong, where they are, and what they're going to do about it? It's such a simple equation. Just put it together. This is what the problem is. I'm going to approach it. We're going to do this in a process to get it done, because we have it. We're the most powerful country on earth. I've been saying this for the past 3 days about everything I'm talking about. Why don't we start acting like it? Mostly because we don't want to.
Yeah, 100%. So we're gonna be following this hard. It's Louisiana. It's gonna be very difficult. It would be great to have him in the Senate. Imagine the speeches he would give. How great it would be. That said, if he cannot make it in the Senate, I still would prefer Foghorn Leghorn to Kennedy. Can we draft him as a potential replacement?
Might make a little bit more sense. And last thought, again, I want everyone to realize we started this with him smoking a big blunt on a campaign ad. We ended with him breaking down all the reasons why we need to fund these things that'll help Louisiana move forward and progress and represent people that live there. It's crazy how you can smoke a blunt and still come up with the most thoughtful statements that break down all these barriers of all the BS that we see all the time. It's crazy. It's almost like it doesn't affect you to think.
Yeah, not in the way that they say. But let's jump into another story. So after the news that OAN would no longer be on DirecTV, a decision we don't fully understand why it was made, why AT&T, the parent company, decided to do that. A lot of people are trying to understand this. Some have moved right past a search for understanding into attack mode. And that includes a host on OAN named Dan Ball. That is his real name. And this is what he had to say about AT&T's decision.
And oh, by the way, I'll just add this at the end. If you've got any dirt on Mr. Kennard, I'd love to see it and put it on this program. You bring me concrete evidence of whatever it may be, cheating on his taxes, cheating on his wife, saying racial slurs towards white people. Folks do that. Whatever it may be, find it for me, bring it, and we'll air it. Everybody's got dirty little sins and secrets they're hiding. And this man deserves to have them exposed for what he's doing to not only this network, the owners, the hundreds of employees, but you, the viewers, who want a fair and honest and truthful voice. Don't let them do this to you.
Okay, if you want a fair and honest and truthful voice, well, fair, is it fair to try to dig up dirt on the, let's see, the AT&T board chairman because his company decided, or a subsidiary decided to drop you? You want to ruin his life? I have at it, Ball, but this does not seem like a very rational response there. What do you think?
What's the how's this gonna work again? This is crazy. So Mr. Kennard, who he's going after over this, because he's part of AT&T and they're part of DirecTV. Again, you get the anger. You can tell your viewers what you said earlier. Hey, call and tell your cable provider you want to keep OAN. That's normal stuff people say when they're trying to save their network, right? But for some reason, it then goes to let's go after the chairman. Let's go after his dirty dealings, his dirt. Okay, say you go after the chairman and he's been cheating on his wife. And then the lady has proof, she has pictures, everything. And then you air it on your show. Is William Kennard then gonna go, oh man, Dan Ball just exposed me for cheating on my wife. She's leaving me, my kids hate me. I think we'll bring back OAN.
Yeah.
How does that work?
No, Jayar, you dummy, you don't get this? He's gonna be like, I hate the personal damage this has done to me, but I respect the journalism. we need journalism like that. No,
they get to the root of the story.
I think this is one of a couple things. Maybe it's just the right-wing vindictive thing that I will burn down everything.
That's what.
Or it could be Dan Ball might be like, okay, so this network is going down hard, and if they hadn't dropped us, the lawsuits for all the voting lies that we told might take us down. I need to come up with something I can do. Maybe I can draw some attention to myself by attacking the AT&T guy, raise my profile as a right winger, and then start a Substack or something. I don't know. Maybe that's
interesting theory. Interesting theory, maybe. But I don't think there's much of a thought process. It's anger and it's rage and it's retribution. Yeah. It's kind of what conservatives are dealing in lately. Well, not lately, but that's what they're dealing in to make sure that this is how things get changed for them, especially if they're following the MAGA wing that's brought up. It's anger and it's pushing and it's violence and it's intimidation. That's all they know. It's really weird. And you're not gonna get there. And you mentioned the lawsuits. That might be a small reason why they're dropping it. They don't want to deal with this madness anymore. It's like we adopted this puppy. We adopted this puppy. It was cute. It was popular for a minute. Everyone at the dog park loved it, but it kept peeing on my stuff and it kept ripping up my slippers. We got to get rid of them. So they getting rid of the puppy. It's over.
The puppy is being sued for $2.7 billion. I don't want this puppy anymore.
He keeps acting up. We can't keep in control. We can't crate train him. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, OAN cannot be crate trained. By the way, super fast, on Monday on OAN, Trump spokesperson Liz Harrington, whose Twitter account is basically just Trump's Twitter account now, framed the decision to drop OAN as an extension of a purported communist plot to steal the 2020 presidential election. I've always thought that Netflix's decision to not re-up Dark Crystal for a second season, part of a socialist plot to steal an election in Honduras. I've always thought. I want to fit in one last story before we close out this hour. So let's, do I need to set this up? Yeah, I'll probably set this up. Dan Crenshaw recently had a quote of his get a poor reception, and he gave a poor reception to someone quoting it back at him. In this case, though, it was just a 10-year-old girl. Take a look at how he reacts.
Thing here is that we have important hero archetypes that we look up to. Jesus is a hero archetype, Superman is a hero archetype. Real characters too. I could name 1,000. Rosa Parks, Ronald Reagan, end quote. I can't wrap my head around this.
I'll help you. Put a period after the word Jesus and don't question my faith.
Wow.
Okay, that's...
To a 10-year-old girl. Way to go, guy.
Who's...
You moron.
What?
Yeah, you don't talk to a kid like that. Yeah, boo.
Don't question my faith.
Oh, okay.
You guys can ask questions about all of these things and I will answer them. But don't question my faith.
I can question your faith if this is what you said.
That's...
Okay, Jayar, I mean, that was not great on his part, I don't think. What do you think?
Well, I think the audience kind of let him know that it wasn't great on his part. You moron, what's wrong with you? So I don't know, she looked a little older than 10, but still, she was a young girl.
Supposedly she's 10. That's what all the media accounts are saying.
So they're arguing over this hero archetype of Jesus versus Superman versus Rosa Parks versus Ronald Reagan, and he had all this stuff listed out. So the first off, this discussion and this battle and this anger is over who's your favorite superhero, basically. This is what they're fighting over. They're fighting over, you said all these people are equivalent to Jesus. Well, that's up to him, bro. But then again, hey, bro, calm down. She's just asking a question.
Yeah, she's just asking a question. That's literally, he said, like, we could bring up the graphic or whatever, the second one. He did say what she said. And by the way, Crenshaw, you're running as a Republican. You guys have set up these insane standards for impurity that you need to constantly abide by. Well, dive on in, because this is the party that you made. It doesn't seem fair, but your reaction to it is just, don't tell the girl, like, and don't question my faith. It's a 10-year-old girl. How do you not know that that's gonna look terrible? My favorite person in that entire room, by the way, other than maybe the girl, although it might be that she's just supporting some other Republican through her family, like it was a proxy thing. The guy who yelled out, "You moron," the way he said it was great. Specifically because there's no way I can imagine him doing that except with one hand like this and the other holding a beer. "Ya moron!" Like that's the vibe I got off of that.
Maybe smoking a blunt.
Do you think Do you think it's a fair criticism? Like he did say, here's Superman and Jesus, and now here are real characters like Rosa Parks. He does seem to be implying that Jesus isn't real.
He's separate, but did he separate that his biggest hero is Jesus and these other folks are his more like kind of hero?
He said Jesus is a hero archetype, superhero is a hero archetype, real characters too. I could name 1,000, Rosa Parks, Ronald Reagan. So the real characters are.
She might have been mad about that. You're right. It may not necessarily been about making Jesus as equivalent as these other guys, but that he's not real.
Implication. Yeah.
You got to answer the questions. You've created this monster. You have to answer it and live with it.
Yeah, maybe he should have put a period on it so that they wouldn't question his faith. Anyway, not a great performance, Dan Crenshaw, and you're supposed to be some kind of tough guy. You keep putting yourself in these fake action movies. You can't take on a little girl.
Oh, I love that.
Anyway, exactly. Okay, so that's all the time we have for our first hour. Thank you to our linear audience. So we do have more coming though. If you're on Twitch or if you're on YouTube, there's a lot more fun after this, including OAN's recent trubs and a whole bunch besides. So we're gonna take a short break, couple minutes. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.